Okay, hi everybody. So my name is Jacob Adams. I am a fitness and leadership coach. I help people, clients, just like yourself, get to the next level, whatever that is, whether it's getting more strength, more energy, more self-confidence, clearing away some of the doubts that sometimes hold us back. That's what I excel at. Some of the people I've worked with, just whether they start with one push-up, moving all the way to getting into Olympic lifts, that's sort of a good picture of my everyday work, where it's, if someone starts at the ground level, moving them to something advanced like an Olympic lift or a snatch or something like that, that's a pretty big difference, right? Has anyone here, by show of hands, struggled with being able to something as simple and silly as touching your toes? By show of hands, or sciatic nerve issues. I hear that all the time. Lower back issues. 80% of Americans, for example, have back tension, back pain. 80% of Americans, at least at one point in their life. So by show of hands, has anyone felt that? Right, and 80%, I mean, we gotta have, everybody was keeping their hands down, but I actually got into yoga because I was a bodybuilder. I started bodybuilding around 1996, so I've been training for about 22 years now with weights. Actually, I'm fresh off the gym floor right now. Literally was moving weight about 30 minutes ago, maybe 40 minutes ago. And here I am. And so I bodybuilded for about 10 years, and I saw my body was getting tight. I couldn't touch my toes. Like doing something as simple as like going to the floor and going like that. Like there was no movement in my shoulders. I'll show you right now just to kind of, so right, like something like that, I would have not been able to even move an inch. I was just stuck, right? Bodybuilding kind of has its very big benefits, but I was also very tight. And so I was like, well, how am I going to solve this, right? So there was a yoga class at the gym. I said, look, I'll just start with yoga. I was teaching a lot of cycling classes, which is known as spinning. Has anyone ever done spinning? One person? Okay. So I was an instructor for 6 cycling. So that was cycling and bodybuilding. And yoga was there, sort of like this. A lot of people overlook yoga, I think, because, especially guys, I think, overlook it because our time in the gym is sometimes limited. And we sometimes say, well, I just want muscles, or I want to get my chest, or I want to get my arms. And I was a bodybuilder, so that was my main focus. So I kept putting yoga aside until you could say I saw it as, if I really wanted to have a physique that was top tier, to me, I saw yoga as the next key, believe it or not. And this is back in 2004, 2005. And so I started my first yoga class, and what I found was that it was pretty humbling to be strong physically or be able to push weights. But some of the poses, to hold something like Warrior One, right? Or get into a warrior pose and get down in there, I found it sort of funny that it would frustrate me and it would challenge me, or arching my back or opening my back. There was a lot of pain in my lower back, or a lot of tightness. So here I was, pretty athletic, but something as simple as stretching was on some levels defeating me, right? And so I committed to about 2 times a week. So that's 8 times a month. That was my first commitment. And that's a pretty strong, that's a pretty beneficial rhythm. If someone would say, well, where would you recommend to start to really make an impact? I'd say 2 times a week is a pretty nice rhythm. It's gonna make a difference in your body. It made a difference in mine. And so little by little, I found myself getting more flexibility. But there was also this other aspect that was developing alongside with the physical benefits. Yes, I was able to move more mobile, meaning I found my squats to be better. I felt more comfortable in them. I was feeling less aches. I was recovering faster. I was sleeping better. You know, when you go to bed and you wake up a little bit more refreshed, my sleeps were a little bit deeper, a little bit more rejuvenating. And so that's what started happening with the yoga. But there was this very quiet element, and that'll kind of bring us full circle. There was this very quiet element developing alongside that. There's something called reacting, and then there's reactivity and there's proactivity, right? Let's just say in this moment right now, I realize that you're hearing this information for the first time. We're meeting for the first time. And there's something like anxiety that we as people often talk about. It's very common for people to say, well, I have anxiety, or I have anxiety. And that's kind of the buzzword, I think, amongst what's common in societal conversations. I'm telling you this because my clients talk about it all the time. I have anxiety. I have bad anxiety. I once trained like a beauty pageant lady, and she said, I have bad anxiety, Jacob. And I remember thinking to myself, what is this? This anxiety people talk about. I was like, what is that? And there's this moment between the stimulus that you experience in life and your reaction to it, right? Let's just say someone says, I don't like your shirt, right? I like your shirt, by the way. But or you're wearing an iWatch, so it's hard to not like an iWatch. Let's say someone goes, I don't like your iWatch. There's a moment, that's a stimulus, and then there's a moment there where you can either react or sense the depth of the stimulus and sort of let it wash over you, right? And that's what I mean by this alongside thing. In yoga, there's one of the ways you're going to get through the pain of a stretch, whether it's, I'll show you something, let's say a dancing Shiva pose, something like this, going here like that, and holding it right there, right? Like say something like that, maybe, and then connecting with the breath. So I'll do that again. So say you go here, and then you start listening to the breath, right? You connect back to the breath. And then you slowly start building this connection to the breath and your body. So the definition of yoga is to yoke, to connect, to merge, to make one, the mind, body, soul, right? To make it all one. And this entire process of breathing and doing the poses, right? Let's just say it's a tree pose and you're here, right? And you're here, right? You're in tree pose here, right? You're here like this. You're gently moving into a meditative state. And that's what I mean by there's this quiet development going on alongside the poses. In America, in the United States of America, right, we typically know yoga to be poses, right? The asanas. And that is part of yoga. And interestingly enough, if you can master sitting still in meditation like Buddha, right, then that's actually a very advanced yogic pose, sitting still and breathing and meditating. You know it's advanced because if you were to try it without any practice and I say, go for 20, 30 minutes, you'd say, I could do it. But there's also a challenge to it. It's easier said than done. Make sense? Has anyone here meditated by show of hands, or does anyone here meditate regularly by show of hands? You see what I'm saying? You see how advanced that is? I hope that makes some sense. And that's that quiet aspect that developing alongside it. So ultimately, yoga, the way I've understood it, is the mastery of self. Carl Jung, which is one of the leading fathers of current, there was like Freud, and then there was Jung, right? And then Carl Jung was one of the forefathers of what is now modern psychology, right? Let's say he described yoga as a very introspective, old, ancient spiritual aspect. So I'll give you a quick history on how yoga came to the States, and it'll kind of go fast forward to how I'm standing in front of you now. Okay? So over 5,000 years ago, I'll just say over 2,000, but over 2 to 5,000, some even say about 15,000, there was the first yogi, right? And he showed up, he didn't say, I'm a yogi. He was the first yogi, and he started meditating, sitting down meditating. Now, first people watched and were like, oh, that's very cute, guy sitting still, etc., etc. As time progressed, people started ignoring him, and then at some point, there was about 7 people that stuck around and started observing this man. Like, why is he sitting still meditating? Why is he sitting still? He wasn't going to the restroom, he wasn't doing normal bodily functions. He wasn't just like caught up in the distractions of life, right? And so these 7 yogis, or at some point eventually went and spread their message across the globe. They went in different directions, spreading the message of what it is to be the mechanics of being a better human being, right? So you could say patience, you could say a spiritual connection, you could say respecting the body, these elements that are indisputable. Like no one's going to say, being patient has no value, right? We can understand on some level, on an intrinsic humanistic level, that has a level of value. And so the science of yoga is that which is respecting these hierarchical necessities to be performing at your best, okay? And so all these things I found through, again, going back to square one, I was that muscle building guy that got into yoga. These other elements of meditation and stuff didn't actually start coming to fruition till really 2012, 2014, okay? Going through some trials in life, I found myself looking at the void, right? Like having success on some level, having a car, having a house, having an education, had the girlfriend, and things were supposed to be great, so you're supposed to feel joy, right? And I sat in my office one day and I was really not feeling it. I was like, yeah, it's externally here, but there wasn't enough inner joy. And so I began to search. All this time, meditation was on my to-do list. I'll get to it. And so the big and I'll just share with you here what happened. I would always carry this book written by Paramahansa Yogananda. And this is where it gets kind of real, and it kind of, again, fast forward. Go back to that yogi that came over 5,000 years ago. And here I am in an office, 2012. And it says, your time will come, and when it does, you will ask yourself, did I make time to get to know him? Referring to God, right? And so at that moment, bam, for me at that time, that's when it was a sort of a game changer for me. It still took 2 years after that to actually start meditating. It's still 2 years. So I said, I'm going to meditate for 60 days. And this is on YouTube, it's a thing I documented because it was really hard. So I started doing that, and then that plus the 500 class I had taught, plus the meditation, here we are today. What has all this gone? What has all this done? All of this searching, all this meditation, all this process. I feel a connection to my heart, to love, to my family, to just an introspective part. Connecting and sitting down daily and literally listening for direction or connection to God. That is the main point. Now, so if someone were to say, hey, Jacob, so are you saying that there's a spiritual aspect to yoga? I would politely tell them, yes, there is. And there is some critics that say, well, they have criticisms about that. And so that's respected. I can only tell you that for me, it's been a very refreshing aspect to sit down and meditate daily. The poses do give you the benefit of more circulation to the joints, helps blood circulate in the tendons and ligaments where there is less circulation typically. Let's just say if you go into a deep bend, a deep forward bend right here like this, and you start holding it and getting deeper and deeper, you're getting blood and movement in joints and ligaments where typically there's less movement. Let's just say in a modern society, if you sit down as you're sitting here in the front, you're closing your hip flexors here and you're leaning forward, right? So you'll notice as time goes on, so I told you about the spiritual aspect, as the physical aspect, as you walk, so this is my daily posture, something like this. This is my daily posture, right? But if your posture starts closing up on you, you'll start doing something like this. You've seen this before? This comes from sitting down in a chair too long. So, believe it or not, sitting down in a chair is unfortunately, it's one of the most detrimental things to your overall posture and physique and actual functionality as a human being, right? So the postures, you could say, are used to open up the body. And in that, there's also the opening of the mind, the calmness of the mind, and then ultimately, ironically, getting back into a meditative state. So today we will do a 5-minute meditation if you're open to it, if you'd like. I think we're in this stage in society where you say, if you look back, to the early 2000s even, I think we were all, as a collective, I know that there's always people that are leaders and they don't go by the crowd. I think as a collective crowd, as a collective society, from 2000 to 2010, there was a definite movement to acquire material wealth. And that was the primary validation. Even the 80s and 90s were a lot about that. I think we're moving to a time where people are sensing that you can acquire, like I was in that office in 2012, you can acquire certain statuses. You know, I had a good strength in my body. I had a girlfriend. I had a car. I had a house. I had education. You know, check the list, like checkbox, check, 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 right? But you could still find a level of lack of connection to your overall moment in life. In other words, hey, maybe you feel like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Maybe I'm supposed to be somewhere else. So there's a level of disengagement that we have with our daily life if we're just checking boxes, but if we're not like, okay, like I'm honored to be here with you. This is where I want to be. This is where I have to be, right? So there's that like, moment of acceptance, and a lot of that comes from this meditative practice, right? Does that make any sense? I hope I'm making some sense. And so I hope that's starting to connect there. And so in the past, that's where it was. Currently today, though, in high performance coaching and the top tiers of like in Silicon Valley, in people in high performance coaching, whether it's Brendon Burchard, people from the Warriors Way, like these top of the line, top notch coaches, people that are pushing the boundaries in their industry, meditation has come to the forefront as one of the key practices to maximize, you could say, clear thinking, creativity, alpha brainwaves, patience, to get visions of like, what is it that you need? Because if you're consistently consuming information, right, but you're not kind of listening what's stirring within you, how will you ever bake the cake that is your art? That's a metaphor, right? In other words, how are you going to cook that perfect recipe, get that perfect recipe that's already in there, if there's always messages coming in, but there's not enough connection to that inner drive, that inner voice? I hope that makes some sense. And this is where the meditation aspect is really powerful. So that's the difference between where it was and where meditation is today. It's now seen by the most rugged of individuals, whether it's a mechanic, whether it's a Fortune 500 CEO, whether it's a YouTuber, whether it's Instagram model, whatever you're looking at. Today's innovators are now dialing in on the importance and the impact that meditation has. And yoga is a part of that. The Hatha yoga, and it all kind of stemmed from back in that 5,000, 6,000 years ago. Here we are, it's the year 2019, January 7th, 2019. It's an interesting evolution, I think, there. So some of the common mistakes typically is to want to be the best at something like this. But I got ahead of myself. Lastly, the best way to get involved is you could get an app, like for meditation. You can come to our gym and try classes. Yoga's a big concept. You don't have to come to our gym. Of course, that is where I work, and of course, that's partly who's representing us, right, today. But you can go to any yoga studio that you feel is good, or you can start with a DVD at home. You can go to Netflix, get a DVD from there. Back then, they used to rent them out. I don't know what they're doing now. You can go to a YouTube channel that does yoga. My friend has a YouTube channel. So you can get yoga for free on your phone right now, right? The channel, my friend's, is Yoga TX. That's my friend's channel. There's Black Swan Yoga in Austin. They have an online account, Black Swan Yoga, and I'll be happy to give you some of these references. Of course, I teach the class. There's yoga studios coming out here. I saw a hot yoga one here in McAllen. And any one of these things, whether it's an app at home, whether it's someone that could teach you meditation, our yoga class, you could do anything like that. One of the most common mistake you can make is not to explore this concept at all. And if that's really your path and this is not for you, then by all means, maybe that's okay. If this is of interest to you and I would say the biggest mistake is to put it on the back burner and say, I'll do it some other day, kind of like the way a lot of us do. That would be the biggest mistake. If you want to do it, but you're like, later, that's the biggest mistake there. And yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And we'll do some meditation here in a bit. Let me answer your questions.